CBS Sports came out and ranked the NFL coaches. And Andy Reid was number 1, Bill Belichick number 2, John Harbaugh 3, Sean Payton 4. Kevin Stefanski checked in at 13. Let's take a look at some of the rationale. And this is where it says the Browns just might be bordering on too much hype after their long-awaited playoff trip a year ago. But he goes on to say that Stefanski got the most out of Baker Mayfield. Offensive attack built an even better lineup in 2021. Cleveland feels like it's in very calm, measured, and creative hands. Let's bring back in Doug Lesmerises. And Doug, I would say what makes that even more impressive is Kevin Stefanski, first-year head coach without any training camp, without any preseason games, after a horrible opener, somehow got everything settled down and turned in the right direction to have the season that the Browns did.
No, we talked a lot. I think we were talking a lot a year ago at this time about continuity, and without a normal preseason, that teams that had continuity, same coaches, same quarterback, same GM, they were going to have an edge over teams like the Browns, who had a new GM and a new head coach. And the Browns played like they had continuity. I think that's probably, even though they got better over the course of the year, like they had a crazy opener, which is just like, what are you going to do? But they very quickly started playing more like a team that, there wasn't a lot of, hey, what are we supposed to do here kind of stuff. So I do think Kevin Stefanski deserves a lot of credit for that. We did it on our Orange and Brown Talk podcast earlier this offseason. We had a draft of the best coaches in the NFL. I think we did draft Kevin Stefanski in the top 10. It's hard when you have, kind of new guys versus longtime guys. And even, in this division, it's like, well, John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, those are two guys. If you're going to have a list, they've got to be ahead of Kevin Stefanski because they've been doing it for a long time. But I kind of think that Kevin Stefanski is going to be the Browns head coach for the next 20 years, and that this is the beginning of a thing. And, that at some point in time, people are going to look at Kevin Stefanski like they look at Mike Tomlin, and that he's going to be ingrained with the franchise. And I think it's sort of that calm, measured composure that just keeps kind of things going. And then the fact is, just in this era, when you are an offensive mind, you don't have to be searching for an offensive coordinator. You're not a defensive guy who, that if your coordinator leaves, your offensive coordinator leaves, what are we going to do? He's always going to be the offensive brain trust of this team. Alex Van Pelt's really important, but it's always going to be Stefanski's offense, and that's just an edge. That's just an edge in the modern NFL. So, he's going to keep moving up, I think. Now, let me throw in a caveat. He sort of entered a perfect situation, other than the pandemic, in that he had a really talented team that had a stinky year the year before. So guys were looking for structure. Guys were, he didn't have a deficit of talent. That's a good team. They just had a bad season. Now you've got to build on the success. And, last time they sort of had success, and then they had all the hype coming into the Freddie Kitchens year. They didn't handle that. So I do think that's a different challenge. They didn't have a ton of expectations last year. Now they do. So that is a different challenge for him. And we have to hold off a little bit until we see how he handles that. Again, I cover most of the Browns in Ohio State. I think Stefanski and Ryan Day are in very similar situations. Everything's gone perfectly. Day's done it for 2 seasons, Stefanski for 1. It almost makes me curious how people will react the first time something goes wrong, because something's going to go wrong. Right? I mean, something's going to happen. The Browns are going to lose a game they shouldn't lose. They're going to have a little losing streak. There's going to be a conflict with the player. But for Browns fans right now, it's almost hard to imagine that with Kevin Stefanski. It's like, well, he does everything right. And it's like, well, nobody does everything right for 10 years. But so far, hard to argue.